Welcome back. This is Sandy with Sandy's Organized Chaos, and today we're going to be doing this super easy brushstroke peekaboo. So easy, I know you guys got this. As always, I'll make sure to put everything that I use today into the description box below so that you guys can purchase those items if you would like to. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's wake up, prep these tumblers, and slay all day. Let's do this. All right, I'm going to quickly go over the base today because we're here more for the brushstroke look, you know what I mean? So, but I am going to go over my base really quick just for my new friends out there. My base is already prepped and primed. I just painted it this basic white for the glitters that I'm going to be using today. And I'm going to apply my glitter with the epoxy method. I just find that all my glitter tends to lay a lot flatter and go much smoother when I do it this way. But I am just using Illuminlight's fast set epoxy. I did a 1-to-1 ratio, so I just did 5 ml, so that 2.5 plus 2.5 of A and B mixed together to make my 5. And I didn't quite use all of the 5, just enough to kind of give it a nice coating, so that way I know my glitter has enough room to shift around and lay flat. Now that I know my epoxy is fully covered on my tumbler, top to bottom, making sure there is no open gaps of dryness anywhere, now it's time to go ahead and apply our glitter. This is called Mist Red, White, and Blue. It's a regular shaped kind of chunky mix of red, white, and blue glitter. And this is going to be my base, so I'm just going to go ahead and fully load up my tumbler with this glitter. But because one of the components in this glitter is white, it's like an opal white, that's why I used the white base today. It does have an undertone of gold, so once it's kind of stacked up on top of the other colors, there is a little hint of gold here and there as well. And then once I have that all loaded up, I'm just going to take my opposite gloved hand and I'm going to tap everything down really good. I'm going to pull everything back off the rim. I'm going to tap everything down, making sure that it is smooth as possible. This will really help out when you go to do your coating of epoxy over top. Now the next step that you want to do after this is all cured is you want to get it smooth, you want to get it epoxied smooth. So what I did was I sprayed it down with my 2x ultra spray to make sure that my epoxy had something to stick to and it didn't wick away off these glitters, these metallic glitters. I went ahead and I applied a flood coating of about 30 mLs of epoxy. You could do 30 to 40 because this is a 30-ounce tumbler. That's why I use so much. If you use a bigger or smaller tumbler, you might want to bring it down, your measurements down or up from there. And then after that, I sanded it down really well and I applied one more coating of epoxy over top. I believe it was about 20 mLs, just to make sure my surface was nice and smooth for our brush stroke look that we would like to do. I went ahead and let that cure, and then we're going to move on to the next step. All right, after your tumbler is nice and smooth and cured, we are ready to start this peekaboo brush stroke look. So I just went into my Cricut design space, or my Cricut, design space, and I chose a star shape, which is free right off to the side. I went ahead and I picked out, or I'm going to do up 3 different sizes. So the first one will be about 2 inches in height. The second one's going to be about 1 inch in height. And then the last and third one's going to be about 1/2 inch in height. And then I'm just going to get these cut out. That's pretty much it for the first step here. Now, right before I cut, I am going to go ahead and make 10 copies of each of these stars and just apply that. That was up in the upper left-hand corner there. You can go ahead and do it that way. It's a little bit easier than sitting there and trying to duplicate everything a bunch of times on your Cricut design space. All right, we have our stars, they're ready to go. And now we just want to think about where we want to put our brush strokes. So I'm only doing probably one on the top and then another one on the bottom. So kind of just like off center from each one. So I'm just going to think about that when I do my stars. And this is also going to help when I do my brush strokes too, to kind of get my placement right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these stars. I'm going to do probably I did all 3 there. I did the big one, medium, and small there. And then some of them are just going to be the medium and small. And if you see, I'm going to the top, and then I'm just kind of moving over just slightly and doing a couple more right off to the bottom as well. So we're going to do some brush strokes off the top and off the bottom. So that's all you want to do. Just kind of figure out where you want your brush strokes. And if you want yours to look just like mine, this is pretty much how it looks once it's done. So you see there's some at the top, and then just right off to each side on the bottom is some more. And then I only did a couple of the big stars here and there. I think I did 2 big stars all together, and then the rest of them were the medium and small stars. Now we're ready to move on to doing our brushstroke look. So I have my pop of color. This is just a royal blue, and I also have just some basic white acrylic paint. You guys just use any colors you already have on hand, okay? You don't have to go out of your way to buy anything if you don't want to, or you don't need to. If you already have colors on hand, just use what you have, okay? So I have my white and my blue because that's what I'm going to be starting with. I also have a 3 or 4 inch chip brush here that I'm going to be using, and this is what's going to give us that brush stroke look. And I'm starting off with the white because I want to be able to come through and kind of lighten up my blue just a little bit. I'll show you guys that here in a second, but it's extremely simple. All I'm doing is just pretty much taking the corner of my brush, and when I do the bottom, I make sure that I sweep up so that way I get that ending look that I would like with that brush stroke look. And when I do the top, I make sure I do the opposite direction so that way I get the same exact look. And I'm not fully covering the stars. I'm more doing kind of half of the stars when I do it. So it's very simple. You just want to about cover the half because you still want to come through with your blue as well and give it kind of that two-toned ombre brushstroke look. And for each brushstroke look, I'm ending about in the middle, if not a little bit over. So I didn't want to come too far up or down the tumbler. I wanted everything to kind of end roughly in the middle, so that's what I'm going to be doing here. And I am also trying to keep it as straight as possible because that's the look that I'm going for here. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a brushstroke look. So, you know, I know you guys got this. It's super easy. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush. I'm not going to rinse it off or anything. And I'm going to dip it into the blue. You see I'm just dipping it right into the corner of my brush there. And I'm going to come through and do the same exact thing while this acrylic paint is still wet is when you want to do this. That's why I used my acrylic paint first, because acrylic paint takes a little bit longer versus the kind of chalky paint of the pop of color. Pop of color dries pretty quick. So that's another reason why I did the white first as well. But I'm just taking the edge of my brush, dipping it into that blue, and just coming right over top, and it's going to create that kind of ombre two-toned look for us. Super easy. Now we're just going to let that dry. Now to speed up the process of drying, I just went ahead and used my blow dryer. You know, you can do that if you want to speed it up to get it done a little bit quicker. I just used my blow dryer. Now we're just going to come through and peel back all of our little stars. Now let's say you're having an issue being able to see your stars. You already know you're not going to be able to see them once everything's painted on. You could go ahead and take a hot glue gun and kind of do little dabs of hot glue on your pieces so that way you can see your peekaboo or where you want to remove the peekaboos a little bit better when you come to this part here. But I was able to, I know it's hard to see from up here, but I could see it just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and peel all of these little pieces back. And this is what we're left with, our pretty little peekaboo brushstroke look. So now the next thing I want to do is I wanted to add some foils to mine. I don't know, I just felt like it needed it. I don't know, you know, just one of those things. But I'm going to go ahead and use my tack it over and over. For those of you that don't know what tack it is, it goes on white, and then once it dries, it's completely clear. But the whole point of this is it stays tacky even after it is quote unquote dry. So it's great for things like foils and stuff like that. Burnishing down, making those hollow looks with super fine glitters and everything. So now I am going to apply my glue in the same exact fashion that I applied my brushstroke because I wanted everything to kind of have a cohesive look to it. So I took a bunch of my glue, loaded it up onto my brush, and I'm going to just brush it on exactly like how I did my paint. The only thing I messed up on was that first brushstroke I did with my glue. I ended up doing just right next to the white because I wanted everything to look organized, you know. So I ended up just doing right next to the white all the way around, except for that very first one I did on the blue. I don't know why, but so you're just going to go ahead and brush that on. You're going to go ahead and let that dry up really good. Again, you can use a heating source to kind of help that speed up with the drying process as well. And once that it is dry, I'm going to hold it up to the camera. You can see, you can't even see it perfectly clear. You can kind of see a little bit, you can touch it and feel that it's tacky. But other than that, you know, you can't see it at all. So now I just have some silver foil here. Now when using foil, you want to make sure you put the matte side down, shiny side up, and all you're going to do is burnish that down really good. And then after you get it burnished down, you're going to peel it back, and that's what it's going to look like. It gives us kind of that chip brush gives us that same kind of look, that cohesive look, that with all the brush strokes and kind of rustic looking and all that. But it also kind of has, it looks like sparklers in a way, kind of reminding me of firecrackers or sparklers or something like that too. Now, after all my foil is applied, the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and put a coating of epoxy over top of this. I did about 10, 15 mLs, you know, if that. I went ahead and put it onto my turner, hit it up really good with my torch, and I'm going to let that cure. And then we're going to work on our decal for our next portion of this peekaboo brushstroke look. So I bought this decal off Etsy. I believe it was meant for cake toppers because I see how it's all connected together. It's great for cake toppers, I guess, but I really liked it and I thought it would just work a lot easier with what we want to do, because we want to do that kind of peekaboo look through it. So you're going to go ahead and upload your decal. You want to get it sized down to the size that you would like. I like to do about 3.5 in width, so it was a little over almost 3 inches in height as well. And then we're going to go ahead and apply an offset to that look. And my offset, I wanted a little bit thicker, so I'm trying to see what I put here. I think it was about 0.56 once it was all said and done. I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Now everything is all, I'm not going to touch anything. I'm going to leave it all connected together. Then I'm going to come through and highlight all my pieces all in one fell swoop. I'm going to come down to the lower right hand corner. I'm going to slice everything. I'm going to pull the black away. That's what I'm keeping to do my stencil. That's going to essentially be my stencil. And then right there you have your outline for once it's all said and done. So you have your stencil and your outline for when it's all done. So now we're going to go ahead and get that cut out. My outline is going to be in white, and then my stencil, I'm just going to use some scrap vinyl that I have laying around to cut that out in, since it's essentially going to be for my peekaboo anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and apply my stencil first. That's what we're going to do because we're going to be painting over top of it. And I want you guys to remember how you apply your stencil, because that's essentially how you're going to apply your outline once it's all said and done. And what I mean by that is, see how I burnish down the center and then I go off to each side. I made some slits here and there to help out with the curving of the tumbler as well. But that's pretty much how you want to apply your outline as well. It's really going to help you out. We'll go over that a little bit more once we go to do the outlines. But all right, you just want to get your stencil all laid down. You want to make sure it's burnished nice and flat so that way none of these paints get tucked up underneath or anything. So I'm going to be using red, white, and blue. I'm going to go ahead and shake my paints up really good, get those put on my plate so that way I can easily get to them with my brush. Because I'm using that same exact brush that we did for the first brush stroke, I'm using the same exact thing. So just different colored paints this time. So once I have my paints on my plate here, I'm going to go ahead and do like a practice brush stroke, you know, just with my dry brush, just to figure out where I want to do it. You know, just made it easier for me. Then I'm going to go ahead and load up my brush really good, because you are only pretty much doing one stroke. I did one stroke this way, turn my brush, stroke the other way, and that's it. You cover in the top portion. And you do want to work a little bit quicker with these paints because they are chalk paints, so they do dry like I talked about earlier. I'm going to rinse my brush off really good, and I'm going to dry my brush off very quickly. So again, this is just going to help out with everything kind of bleeding together, and you just want to quickly do that, moving as fast as you can. You know, not too quick, but quick, you know. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my white. I'm going to place that right above the red. Again, not going too far over each side of my decal here, but making sure that it is covered fully. So there we go. I'm just brush right into there, and we'll come back through and kind of blend that in just a little bit better once we have all of our colors applied. Again, I'm going to wash my brush, dry it off really good, and then I'm going to add that last color, which is my blue at the very bottom here. Doing the same thing, making sure I tap off everything, all the extra water. You don't want it too watery or it'll drip all over the place. You don't want that. And again, just sweeping off to one side, making sure everything's fully covered, and sweep off to the other side. Now to kind of finish up this look and make sure it's all blended in really well, I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush off one last time. I'm going to take some more of the white that was in the middle because again, that was acrylic paint, so it doesn't cover as nicely as the chalk paints do. I'm going to take a little bit more of that white paint and I'm going to start to kind of sweep that into the middle, making sure that it kind of gives me that faded look that I would like. So I'm just going to take a little bit more of that white, do the same exact thing where I come through and I just sweep it into the middle. And then I'm going to turn my brush so it's perfectly sideways. And I'm just going to go one time over the entire thing and just make sure that it looks, I'm going to tap off some of my paint, take my brush and just sweep right over the top of it, just like that. And that's it. It blended everything in really well. Now we're just going to let that dry, and you'll know it's dry when it turns kind of this matte color, and that's what we're left with. Now the next step you want to do, just like with our stars, is you want to go ahead and start peeling back all of the decal that we had applied. Now before we apply the finishing outline that we want to put over this, we're going to go ahead and put another coat of epoxy over top of this. This again is just to help out with that process of applying the vinyl. In case you mess up, you don't want to have to peel back all your paint, and it also makes sure that your vinyl is going to adhere to your tumbler as well. So I'm going to go ahead, and I did spray this down with my semi-gloss. Every step I do, I always do this just as a precaution, and I'm going to apply about 10 mLs of epoxy to my tumbler. Now I decided once I applied my epoxy, I wanted to add just a little bit more to my tumbler. So I went ahead and I took some shooting stars, and I'm just going to apply these shooting stars right in where I did the silver foil. So just to kind of give it a little bit extra, it has some holographics in it, and I just felt like it added to everything that we did here so far today. So now I'm just going to go ahead and sit that on my turner. I'm going to let that cure, and we're ready to move on to the next step. And I forgot to mention, I made sure that I didn't put any of those little stars near where I needed to apply my vinyl the next round. You want to be very careful with that, okay? Because we want a nice smooth surface for our vinyl. All right, so before I apply my decal, I'm going to go ahead and do up my rim really good. Very important. Clean everything off, any little debris that might have gotten on there, and then we're going to apply our decal. So this part's a little bit tricky because you're working with just the outline only, and you want to make sure that you get everything applied nicely. You want to make sure it all looks even with each other. So again, I just wanted you guys to remember how you cut apart your decals. So I'm cutting as close as I can and making sure I get some slits in there as close as I can to my decal. Again, this is going to help us be able to kind of manipulate the decal and stretch and pull and make sure that it's going where we want it to go. So I remembered that I applied the middle first, so that's exactly what I'm going to do with my outline. I'm going to stick it down into the center, lining up my star at the top. That's how I lined mine up. I'm going to go ahead and slide my finger down in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and do that top portion first, but if you may have noticed, the S is still kind of poking up a bit. I don't want to force it down. So the next thing I'm going to do after I get the top all pushed down is I'm going to start to pull back my transfer tape, and this is going to give our S a little bit more freedom to be able to flex and push down properly. So once I have my transfer tape peeled back, I'm going to go ahead and finish up that S there. And then I'm going to do the same thing around the other side. I'm going to kind of stretch and pull everything up, making sure everything lines up. But again, if you're having some issues, make sure you pull your transfer tape a little bit further away on the opposite side, so that way you give yourself a little bit more freedom to kind of stretch your vinyls on the other side if you need to. So that's all you want to do to be able to line up your outline here. You're going to make sure that you burnish that down really, really well. Now, because there are some raw glitters on this, we put the little stars on there. I am going to make sure that I come through and spray this down one last time with my 2x Ultra to make sure that my epoxy has something to stick to. I'm going to go ahead and give it its 2 last finishing coats of epoxy, and she is good to go. Whether you take this design and duplicate it as is, or take it and let it inspire you to create something that is completely your own, I hope that you guys had a lot of fun watching this tutorial today. Again, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.